Yeah, dear audience, welcome back from the short break welcome to our panel discussion. We have 4 panelists here today. 3 you already know, and then we have in addition Agnes Borg on Skype. I will first present who you know already. We have Frank Kensy here from b.fab. He gave a presentation in the first session on format bioeconomy, where electrochemistry meets biotechnology. Then we have Jon Fox from Covestro and sorry for that, Mesbah Sabur from Circularise. They both gave a presentation on proving sustainable manufacturing using blockchain. And as number 4, we have Agnes Borg from EuropaBio. Agnes joined EuropaBio's Industrial Biotechnology team in 2015, has been appointed as Industrial Biotech Director in September 2018. Prior to this, she worked as European Union Public Affairs Consultant for Weber and Chandwick for 5 years, specializing in the field of environment and sustainability. She also has work experience from the European Parliament and the Swedish Embassy in Lisbon. Agnes is a Swedish national who has studied political science and international relations in Sweden, Belgium and Spain. Apart from native Swedish, she speaks English, Spanish and French. Welcome, Agnes, on Skype. I saw
Thank you very much.
Heard you already, so yeah, great. Yeah, I would like to start the panel discussion with taking a look to our polls. We have around 100 participants worldwide from all over the world. And the first question was, you can't see here the results so easily. Who do you think is the main driver of the green transition? And I will show you the results now, and then everybody of you can give comments and whether you see it in the same way or other way. Here is on the screen now. So number 1 is consumers with 47%, and number 2 is politics, 35%, and only 18 industry. So the question was, who do you think is the main driver of the green transition? Agnes, would you like to start to comment, give your comments to this result? Is this also what you think?
Yes. Yes, and thanks a lot for having me join the panel here this afternoon. So I think it's an interesting outcome. I don't see the screen from here, but I heard you said consumers, indeed followed by politics and then industry. Well, I think there's several drivers of the green transition, and I think also we here have been talking about the bio-based industries and the role of them, and I think also the overall discussion really moving from concerns over finite resources, but also really the broader one about climate change, and I think that links to both consumer politics and industry. So for me, it's really a combination of these, because I think there's increased awareness and demand for sustainable products from consumers. Also, we have seen both at EU and global level clear ambitions to move towards a green transition, and also talking about, post-COVID, about the greener, or making the recovery greener. But of course, industry will have an important role to play in this, as really bringing the solutions forward. And it's very important that they have the right framework to do so.
Yeah. Okay, many thanks. Frank, what is your feedback?
Okay. I also have the same feeling as the poll presented here, the outcome. I think the awareness of the customers, they changed just the last few years after the big movement of the Fridays for Future. Yeah. So and this is also my feeling, what I see in the market. And but we still need the politics to prepare the framework of the to implement to develop new technologies, and also to implement the technology then. So and more industry come into play and take over new technologies and bring this to scale. Yeah. So I think the outcome is quite how I feel it as well. And now we have to continue, but the politics is really important to prepare the frame and make it attractive to invest in new technology and also finally the production plants. Yeah.
Okay, Jon?
Yeah, it's interesting. I have a presentation I give quite often that lists those three plus NGOs plus brands, and one drives the other and one drives the other. And at the center is typically industry, because they're getting it from all sides. So you have brands that are responding to consumers. You have the governments that are responding to the demands of their citizens, and then you have NGOs which are holding them all accountable. And so within that whole model, everything is being driven in pressure. There are definitely within industry we're responding. But I agree with this as far as maybe that the first domino in this line is the consumers, and it's the ability for them to say, well, we need things to change, and then followed, by industry or politics, or at least industry in groups, something like NGOs as well. So,
Mesbah, to join this joint opinion here, I have a different view.
Definitely. I would definitely join it, but the way I look at it is like consumers, they really can vote with their wallet and create demand, but then they can't do everything, right? So the way I see it, they are indeed definitely the first domino, consumers, but then different actors like politics and industry and NGOs, and they all have different ways they can respond to that and have different things they specifically can do, right? Politics, they have certain powers that the consumers will never be able to do so. So I think once the first domino of the consumers is over, a lot of different forces will come into play from the other actors. And so I think they're very interconnected. But I would agree, consumers are definitely there. Like at the end of the day, people within politics are also consumers, right? We're all consumers. So, yeah.
Yeah, normally I would not comment your comments, but in this case, I have a little bit different opinion on this question, and I think the consumer, of course, they want to be sustainable, buy more sustainable things. On the other hand, they have often not the expertise to know what is sustainable, and also they don't want to pay more for it. So that is a little bit a problematic situation. And if I hear so much, for example, if our friend saying, no, I'm so environment friendly, I go with a heavy glass box shopping, and so I save all the plastics. And then you'll see in the LCA that driving a glass box in your car to the supermarket have 5 times more emissions than taking the plastic packaging. That's the problem. So the consumer needs a guidance also for politics, what is really sustainable or not. And on the other hand, the politicians, they are very good framing the new energy system. Yeah, with solar, wind, it's really making a great job there. But in the chemical sector, I miss really visions. And I see some brands really leading here. I see some brands saying now, we're fading out all fossil carbon till 2035 in all our products. This is not coming from the politicians, it's not from the consumer. So I think it's really a very complex question, and we need really detailed answers on that. Just as an add-on, as to think about it, just my additional comments. If someone has some comments on my comments, you are of course free to join the discussion. Anything for that?
There's definitely a need for, how the consumers are learning about what they're knowing and what's legitimate and what's not. So there needs to be more education in that level. So they're not making rash decisions, or at least the brands are making rash decisions based off the pressures from the consumers who are being possibly misled based off the information that they're receiving. And that's not part of the poll, but it's definitely reality, because we see that. Yeah, it's not a good idea to just change your material, change your design, change your process because you think it might be the right way to go without the actual stable ideas in the science and the technology behind that.
I think our experience is also when we make one-to-one, in-depth psychological market research, that we see that the consumer telling us in one-to-one interviews, that they have not the expertise to decide what is sustainable or not, and that they would like to see a label from the government. If they buy plastics, they would like to see what plastic is good or bad, and they have no idea how to evaluate it. So they're asking for official label on materials. Yeah? That's very interesting. So they're asking, please help, politicians help us, that we can make a better decision. Yeah? And so I think there's a lot to do still in this area. Agnes, I cannot see you. Sorry. If you have something to add, please do. Yeah.
No, I agree, and I think in discussions also on really what is the public awareness of bioeconomy and bio-based products and so on. I agree with what you say. You know, there is really interest in sustainability and in climate, but when it comes to really specifics about where products come from and the materials and what they are made of, or what is more sustainable, I think it's really important to have clear communication and awareness raising there, because you pointed out several good points there on what the situation is now.
Okay. Yeah.
We have also to distinguish between opinion and what the customers finally do in the supermarket. Yeah. So if you ask them, what do you want to, what would you prefer, a sustainable product or like a common fossil-based? Yeah. So they would probably choose the sustainable. Yeah. So, but if they are in the supermarket and they have to choose then and pay a little bit more, so this is a question. And so it's also a question of if everybody can afford really this green premium. And therefore, maybe we have to think about like additional taxes for like fossil base, and so that the customers in the supermarket really can compare just on characteristics or properties, and the label, and not on price.
It's the same with meat. Yeah? We have now in Germany this 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 is the best for the animals, 1 the worst. Most selling is 2. 4 almost nothing, and 3 a little bit. This is exactly what you're just saying. Yeah. Okay. I move to the second poll. The second poll is that to what extent will biotechnological processes be incorporated into chemical processes or even replace them in the next 20 years? And we have a big majority. 25 to 60% is 60%. The other are small. So most of our 100 participants here believe that there is a huge exchange or integration of biotech in the chemical industry. Is this also what you see? We start again with Agnes.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. I think definitely there is a push or a move towards, the use of biotechnology and more bio-based feedstock in the industry. I think it's probably difficult to talk specifically about percentages when you talk about forecasts. I know, for example, the World Business Council on Sustainable Development, they did a report, as you might have seen on circular and circular bioeconomy, saying that it represents a business opportunity of up to $7.7 trillion by 2030. So I think they had really a good forecast in several different areas. But I think again here, a lot of companies, and we've heard examples today, have circular roadmaps and strategies, and we have the global framework with the Paris Agreement, the SDGs, and the Green Deal objectives. So I think the context is there, but the extent to which it's really put or brought to market and really picked up and that's also where the regulatory and policy framework will be important, and to really make sure that there is the uptake, that there is the incentives and also policy measures in place there that can really support this. But I would agree that the future, that there should be indeed a boost looking towards the next years.
Yeah. Frank, you are working in different areas. Is it not more that all new technologies will have a big part, not only biotech? You are working also in electrochemistry and other things. So how you see it, is biotech something special, or is this just a more increase of a lot of new technologies we see in reality?
Yeah, no, biotech in general has a big potential, because we can, with almost a platform, you can go into different product directions. Yeah, that is quite nice. So, but still, we have to improve also the processes, because the downstream processing is normally the bottleneck. Yeah, so we have a lot of dilution of the product. So we need to spend also more efforts in downstream processing to make these processes more sustainable and productive. Yeah? So there's currently, I guess, an advantage of the chemical processes, but when it comes to the full or the greenhouse gas footprint, yeah, so then of course green biotech processes could have a benefit. Yeah? So, but we have really to take also the LCA on both different processes into account, yeah. So and compare it, and there's still improvement, but I think it's a big opportunity with all these directions now, with Green Deal, a European Green Deal, maybe in the US as well, coming a Green Deal. So it's a big opportunity, and also the money which will be invested to replace the power plants, the coal power plants. There's a lot of money which goes into new businesses that should be used also for a big part for biotech processes.
Okay. Yeah, Jon and Mesbah, you are not biotech experts, but what is your view on new technologies, the importance of new technologies like biotech in the future chemical industry?
I mean, already seeing it, not, as you said, not an expert, but already seeing it within Covestro, where it's taking off. And if you look at projections, it's going to keep going. I don't think we'll stop at any point, but we're already seeing introduction of new products, bio-based materials, recycled materials, and then new technologies that are being developed almost weekly. So yeah, I see it as not stopping and going to the higher level on that pole. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert on this topic, but I do see indeed there's a lot more coming also on our platform in different ways, like renewable and bio-based polymers, which is great to see the flexibility they have, right? Even from early on, you can just promise the exact same spec to any final customer with a better LCA, hopefully, right? That's a really important point. If the LCA is really a lot worse, you have to question, like, either you could still do it with the potential of improving it, but if there is no potential, there's not a lot of point in it. But yeah, I'm not sure about percentages, but I do see it playing definitely a significant role.
I think the important point about the yield and the byproducts in some biotech processes with a lower yield is not yet so convincing LCA, but it's promising if you improve it.
Yes.
And I see the chemical industry, two pathways which coming parallel. One is the drop-in pathway that you replace the naphtha by renewable naphtha from bio CO2 or recycling. This is also coming in big scale. Their biotech is of course not so important. On the other hand, I see the dedicated processes where you really have new processes which are not in the petrochemical world, and their biotech of course is strong. And both are competing for different applications and processes. So it's really an interesting next decades which technology will really make it in the future. And of course the political area can frame it. That is for sure. Yeah, the last poll here. What do you think are stimuli for more transparency in the supply chain? That's a good question for you. So we have here 4 answers which are close together. Most is legal regulations with 41%, self-interest of companies 32%, and 27% potential offered by digital technologies. I would like this time to start the other way around, because we have here 2 experts on transparency in supply chain. Mesbah, do you follow this result? Legal, self-interest, and potential biotechnologies?
Generally, definitely, like legal compared, like self-interest. Probably not the best phrasing. I would say it's more a combination of self-interest can also be compliance, right? It's very broad, so it can be compliance, but also mitigating risk in terms of your brand image. If you're going to say to everybody publicly, we're going to be net zero in production in 2035, or all products will be recycled, you better be sure that that's the case. And oftentimes your supply chain is so complex that it's really, really hard to be sure. So yeah, definitely, if that's self-interest, agree with it. A combination that you can put on top of that is also the growing demand. Like we're talking about the premium. Are consumers able to pay premium? In certain cases, we see the answer is yes. Definitely not across the board for everything, like food. Like there are some niches where we do expect and see a premium being paid. And that is growing. Like if you look at the Gen X or other generations, that power and that ability to pay more, or at least, well, everybody has the ability, I would say. It's just like, do you really, really care about it enough to compromise somewhere else in your role? So yeah, that combination is definitely, for me, self-interest, I would say. And then I would definitely agree with the poll. Yeah.
But self-interest can also mean that you want to stay in the supply chain. Yeah.
Yep.
If you produce intermediate products and the pressure from the brands are coming, then it's self-interest to show
also self-interest, exactly. Yeah.
And perhaps it's the first one would be the best.
Yeah.
John.
Yeah, that goes a little bit to what I was thinking about as far as from a design perspective. You're talking about this the cycle with all these different players, and when we kind of architect things out, we usually use the same players. We don't know exactly what those people will be. So tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and then what is their business driver? Like, what do they really need from there? And if we're talking, let's just say data, we have data coming from Covestro, or maybe before Covestro going in. Who needs what, and what is their interest? So I side a little bit on the self-interest, but not knowing really what that is, because we know from what we've done from our tests, and we have Covestro, and then we have our OEMs, and then we're starting to figure out the interests of the tiers, what comes after that, and what's coming after that, and with the transparency that's there, what is it that people want, and we have made some assumptions, and we've talked to some companies to try to understand what that is, but there's always an interest, and it's variable depending on where they are in the chain and what they're doing, and maybe the size, and there's a lot of variables. So it's an easy question, but the answer is very complex, because it's this whole system is very complicated. So,
Frank.
Yeah, my opinion is similar. So I would like to focus on the self-interest. Yeah, so I also see it that the companies they promise a lot to reduce the carbon emissions. Yeah, so and therefore, okay, they have to know where their supply chain. Yeah, so and digitalization is helping here. Yeah, so you can track and trace really, or you should implement these technologies. But I believe that the digitalization makes it much more easier. And then you have also, with all the digital data and data points, you have a big potential to learn from all these supply chains. Yeah. So and even you can assume in different fields. Yeah. What is the footprint and so on. Yeah. So this is a big potential to learn from all the digitalization in the supply chain. So and therefore it's in the interest of the companies to track this, and that they are reliable finally to the customers, and that then providing sustainable products at the end.
Agnes.
Yeah, no, I agree with what's been said, and I think indeed a combination of the self-interest and the legal requirements. I think also, indeed, now in the Green Deal discussions, one of the initiatives that's being discussed is around substantiating green claims and really making transparency or improving transparency. I think also maybe one aspect of the self-interest is also around companies and who they attract, because I think it's also, people want to work for companies who are transparent and who can really showcase they're taking responsibility throughout the supply chain. So I would just like to add that little aspect also to the self-interest point. But otherwise, I think I agree with what came out.
Now we have the last round, and my question to all of you is, imagine that the policy framework in Europe, in US with Biden, in Asia, is supporting your ideas, supporting your activities. What is your positive outlook to the next 20 years? I'll start with Agnes. I think EuropaBio is well prepared for those questions. The other have a little bit of time to think about it. Agnes?
Yeah. Sorry, you said that for the next 20 years, the outlook?
If the policy framework in Europe, in US, in Asia will develop in a direction supporting your activities and your ideas, what would be your positive outlook to the next 20 years?
Well, I think there's a lot of potential, and I think, as we heard also in my colleague's presentation this morning, the issue is really not with the technology, but really bringing it to the market. So I think then it's about mainstreaming biobased and making sure that there's good awareness about the benefits of the products, but also really the solutions that can be brought forward by biotechnology. And I think, you know, you already have many products in your everyday life, but there's a lot of potential also in, in gene technology, really in the whole modern biotechnology toolbox. And if we can really enable those with the science-based, predictable framework, there are a lot of new solutions that can be brought in addition to what we have already today. So it sounds like a positive way you have described it in your question.
Okay, thank you, Agnes. Frank.
Okay. So I see it the future very positive because the framework or the frame is already well prepared. Yeah, so I think it started with the Friday for Future. So it was a lot of pressure from young people. Yeah, so and they influenced the parents. Yeah. All the movement influenced the politics. They implemented already a New Deal, started already the investment programs. So and the technology is there already. Yeah. Now we have also the customer awareness and demands. Yeah. So then we have to bring it together, and I think it's positive. And also you see the impact of biotechnology already in COVID. Yeah. So the politics they did not invest the last years, because it was this only small market, and maybe you just have to store the vaccines. Yeah, there's no application. But now they invested tremendous sums of money. Yeah, and I think this will. Yeah, it's already prepared with Green Deal. Yeah, so but we just have to go this direction.
This perhaps had also be perhaps more used for biotech marketing. This great success. No?
Yeah.
Yeah, Jon.
Yeah, so in the next 20 years, I would hope to see, as we've seen in the last few years and what's projected for the next 5 to 10 years, improvements in recycling technologies. For us, we're looking at polyurethane increases in more efficient recycling there. What we've talked about really today was polycarbonates, because that's where we're experimenting with. But as that grows, and this system grows as well, for being able to trace these materials and the byproducts from them, that it would lead to better distribution of these materials at end of life, keeping them away from the environment, and then also on top of that, there's a big business opportunity. So it wouldn't just be, well, we're just tracing these things, we're figuring it out. That there would be a market, and there already is markets coming up from recycled material, and that's going to grow, and that's going to segment into different materials as the recycling technologies mature as well. How that works with tracing? Well, obviously, as you break down, you actually understand where they've been, where they're going, and what's in them. Not exactly sure what will happen with the technologies at that point, but in 20 years, you probably know better than I do about polyurethane recycling. I'm assuming it will be somewhere where you can get down to the molecular level and be able to understand where that polyurethane came from and sell it or market it for something else. So,
Mesbah?
I'd like to go back to the poll, right? So the third thing was the new potential that these kind of things offer. I think the reason is it's the lowest rated one because there's so many question marks. We don't know what those new potentials are exactly going to look like. And I have a feeling that we're in the same space as we were with the internet like 20, 30 years ago when it just got introduced. Like, who would have thought that 20 years later, 30 years later, we would all be having smartphones connected to everybody, having things like a Clubhouse popping up overnight. Like, you cannot connect those dots looking forward. It's impossible. So I think the reason is number third, because it's like we can't know like what the future is going to look like. We can also only dream, I would say. And if you look 20 years in the past, like if you combine the ability to create this shared consensus about traceability, about supply chains, how everything moves in material flows from production all the way to consumption, you put AI, the development of artificial intelligence on top of that. That's going to be such a powerful, like it's like impossible to think about that almost, like what we can do. It's like trying to predict Clubhouse 20 years, 30 years ago. That's what we're trying to do here. So I think even though it's number 3, it's probably number 1 in a decade or so. And we don't know what those things are going to look like. And that's the exciting part.
For me, the biggest wonder is that it was possible 50 years ago to fly to the moon without computers.
Yeah.
That is really surprising, looking back.
Yeah.
And if I look in the next 20 years, I think I imagine your activities will be very successful. And if the consumer buy goods in 20 years, he will have a big choice. He can say, oh, only for Afghanistan, only 2 transport systems, only synthetic diesel, only this and this, and then there is one product left.
Yeah.
And so this is the choice of the consumer in 20 years, perhaps. That would be a nice development. And to end this nice day today, I would say it's possible the first time since Industrial Revolution that we disconnect the chemical industry from fossil resources. And to do this, we need biomass, we need CO2, and we need recycling. Right. There's no doubt about it. We need biotechnology, we need electrochemistry, we need new catalysts. So we need the full range of non-fossil resources and all technologies. Then we have really the chance till 2050 to replace the fossil system. And then we really can tackle climate change. And many thanks for the audience, many thanks for the panelists and speakers. And I'm happy to continue the discussion next time with you. Many thanks and have a nice afternoon. Goodbye.